warmest people I've ever met. Like, I know that I haven't physically met you, but your joy,
Oh.
your warmth, you just do you get that a lot?
Um, Only from good people. So thank you for saying it. Like meets like.
Amazing. I could just, feel your warmth in your emails and, your expressions. So thank you for that.
Thank you for it's lovely to be in your company.
Same here. Right now, so I have met you, and we have a community. Okay, fine. Let me just quickly introduce us and what we do. So we're the Fashion Collective Naija. We are a community of Nigerian fashion creatives. We have a couple of other Africans amongst us. We started in 2020. At first, I'm a fashion illustrator, like you already know. So I just wanted to create a community for fashion illustrators to just share their work and, interact and collaborate. But later on, we had all kinds of, other fashion creatives join us. We had pattern makers, we had garment producers, we had all kinds, join us, and we had to rebrand. And then we became the Fashion Collective Nigeria. And this year we had the good fortune, or let's say last year, we had the good fortune of collaborating with the Digital Fashion Group. And I wanted my community to know more about Web3. So decided to, come up with a power list. And I approached a couple of amazing women in the industry, and you happen to be one of the few that responded. So thank you so much.
Well, it's my pleasure.
Thank you so much for that. I know you're doing amazing work, but can you just give us a background, as to, um, your educational. Then I wanted to mention one thing. I wrote that, you had a BA in fashion, but you changed it to a BS. That's a Bachelor of Science. But
Yes.
you do have, I had to check again, but you do have a Bachelor of Arts in Fashion from SCAD. That's a Savannah
Oh,
Institute of. You forgot
yes.
about that.
I did forget about that.
Oh my goodness. All right, fine. So let's have a bit of a background about you and, how you started out in fashion and how you've been able to merge fashion with tech, with your, is it a, should I call it a startup, a blockchain style lab?
Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
with
you.
your style lab and all the work that you've done.
Sure. Well, first, thank you so much for welcoming me. I feel like I'm among my people because I really am a tinkerer and a fashion enthusiast at heart. And so my grandmother was a hat maker. So made hats and just the finishings, all the different, the button makers, the different techniques and tools to get into the fashion space have been why I'm here today. So I love this group of people and the makers really, this is what inspired me to become interested both initially in fashion and then in integrating fashion and sustainability when I mentioned my science work, and then today with Web3. So I'm from the East Coast of United States, from originally the East
California.
Coast. But I was born in East Coast where we had the mills and these different textiles and different
Sorry,
history.
when you say East Coast, you mean California?
No, I was from New England, from the East Coast originally. I'm currently on the
Okay.
West Coast, and that's a little bit of the story because the East Coast, I grew up like New York, Boston area, where there was just a lot of making going on historically across time. And so I understood the history of making and the power of that, both from the business of fashion space as well as just the artistry and the people that went into making clothing, accessories, footwear, garments.
Mm.
And so I really was inspired by that. Then did move out to the West Coast, and that's a little bit later in the storytelling, but it is around the identity of combining that technology and that innovation space into that what becomes what we're talking about when we talk about Web3. But yes, I got my bachelor. At first I went to art school and fashion work and worked in those places and spaces within the design space. That's what I was interested by. And I actually got my bachelor's of science in on West Coast in California, where I am now. And what provoked that was the interest in doing it was then sustainability and textiles program, because I was really interested in this whole ethnobiology and utilizing the study of plants and people to make clothing. I thought that was really interesting and important to understand in the whole cycle of the making process. And so I did that undertaking.
Did you have 4 years of fashion school integrated with 4 years doing the Bachelor of Science, or were they separate 4-year courses?
I combined them. I've always been a little bit of an interconnected person. So I did 2 years of the more design heavy, and then 2 years of the more science and kind of more investigative in that light. So I did 4 total years.
And then you had a master's in sustainable fashion. Can you tell us about that?
I did, yes. And so my master's was after working in the field a bit and understanding that sustainability. I worked at H&M, a big Swedish company, and they had a lot of sustainability mantras that they were working on initially. And so seeing that, I saw there was a future for integrating sustainability and fashion into the whole business of fashion ecology space. So I worked on my master's in that regard and got to work with some amazing partners, both the London College of the Center for Sustainable Fashion in London, and then and also just across the ecosystem around this whole what we talk about when we talk about sustainability and social responsibility in fashion. So that's how I came up in fashion. It wasn't as a designer; it was more of a thought partner in working with the designers to understand how they could just rethink other tools in the toolbox to the designing journey. So that was really important to me, and it has been, to be able to give the creators a voice and also be able to provide different points of inspiration, not just new materials or new techniques, but new ways of working. And that's really what led me to what I am doing today.
Amazing. So how did you get into tech? How did you get into Web3, the whole metaverse? How did you get into that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I was introduced to Web3 through blockchain. In early 2014, 2015, I was introduced to blockchain because of its impact and sustainability. And what that looked like was, transparency and data traceability, a little bit of RFID, so the tagging of materials so that they could be tracked and traced across the life cycle of the journey, and then recycled or recirculated into the various supply chain ecosystems. But within understanding blockchain, what really was intriguing to me is that we could use data in a different way to benefit designers. And that's where I really became interested in this Web3 space. And I was early enough that I was able to do a lot of learning and tracing how that data could inform the design ecosystem, and then built a community just similar to what you're doing, became investigative and then wanted to build a community. Initially, it was circled around wearable fashion, which was very interesting. That looked a lot like health and wellness tools at that time. So fitness, embedded into at first sneakers and then a little bit into clothing, performance wear, but then playing with designers to make it a little bit more intriguing. And then that took a giant leap into being able to translate the tools of technology into fashion for heritage brands that had been at the fashion journey for quite some time, but that really wanted to understand, again, how to innovate in their whole trajectory of both connecting with consumers, but also creating interesting and groundbreaking things. So that's how I began.
All right, I think I had a bit of a connection problem there. All right, so would you say that was the basis for your startup blockchain style lab? What do you do there?
Sure,
Or
sure.
what does the startup do?
Yeah, so absolutely it was. What I do at Blockchain Style Lab is use data to inform design and build community in wearable fashion, luxury, beauty spaces. And what that's driven into is creating NFTs, gaming ecosystems, metaverse solutions for heritage brands in the Web3 space. And it absolutely was the foundation. What I saw was that a lot of individuals and brands didn't know how to intersect with the Web 2 space, let alone engage in a Web 3 space. So fashion has a hesitancy around digital for many good reasons. There's the sensual experience that was concerning to designers and consumers in the digital space. But what has been so exciting is to be able to work with designers to create avenues of accessibility to various designers who didn't have that ability to go and select materials or even play with materials. There were it was cost preventative to create different types of garments in real life, but in digital spaces, they could actually do that modeling and creativity and what has become digital twinning, but actually test things out and connect on a global scale like we're talking today. It's just such a nice tool. And so I think it was really important to be able to usher in this Web 2.5 space for some brands and designers to be able to find a safe way to build their creativity, their authenticity, and their sense of self, and I mean that brand self or designing self in a digital ecosystem.
I find it interesting that you call it Web 2.5. So what's the difference between Web 2.5 and Web 3.0? What's the difference?
Great question. Yeah, we really are building the metaverse and all that entails as we speak. So there's not, you had asked the definition of the metaverse. That's just so newly defined. And I think it's honestly still becoming defined. So this Web 2.5 space is that bridge that I feel like a lot of us who have been in the industry for some time, but are kind of launching with new eyes, what we're building that bridge for people to say, maybe an e-com site was a little bit concerning at first, or social media presence was concerning. So instead of jumping just into Web 2, let's go to Web 2.5, where we can have this moment of not just an e-com site that would be interactive with a chat box, but let's think about different ways that we can be interactive and with Web3 in mind, knowing that the audience is spending so much time in gaming apps like Roblox, Fortnite, what have you. So they're expecting a visual presence that has that Web3 seasoning, but sometimes it's not the right time for organizations to go directly into Web3. So again, it's this bridge between the Web2 and Web3 space.
So would you say that the Web3 is more immersive, like well, most people, when you're speaking to the layman on the road, he's thinking of Ready Player One. Would you say that that is, but people have said that, Ready Player One is kind of like the advanced, what we project and hope that the metaverse will eventually be, but would you say that that is what Web3 is?
I think Web3 is more than simply a gaming ecosystem. I love the idea of this interoperability where we can travel from a gaming app into potentially like a NFT collection, and then maybe have an avatar who has different demonstrations of self-identity in each of those various spaces, but is being held by one individual. I also think there's a huge opportunity for the tokenization and the playing of these types of identities in these gaming spaces to travel into other ways of doing business. So I mentioned digital twins. There's also these NFCs, which I think the audience that I'm grateful to have joining today really needs to consider, because they're actually tags that can travel with a garment or an accessory and can create an entry into this whole metaverse Web3 NFT space. So it's a uniting of the various virtual worlds and these various interconnected points that is kind of the natural evolution of what I see the internet becoming.
Incredible. All right. So I think we dropped a step because a lot of people are hearing, the metaverse and Web3, and, they're like, what's this new thing, So how would you define the metaverse? And then, is it okay for us to, how will I put it now? Switch between the metaverse and are they how will I put it now? Can you say instead of the metaverse, can you say Web3? Like, what is the metaverse in a layman's terms? Like somebody who doesn't even know anything about, the
Yeah.
metaverse. How would you define it, and how would you define Web3?
Great. Great question. Important question. And I think there's a lot of conversation going on about that exact question. So there's not a click, here's the right answer. How I think of it, and I'm trying to think of it in the terms of fashion, right? Translating the fashion. And this is kind of where I say like that bridge. Within fashion, you have so many different parts and parcels of fashion. So you have the designer, you have the consumer, you have the different entertainment ecosystems like a runway show or a storefront, visual communications tools. You have the evocativeness of a collection, the theme of a collection. You have the buttons, the sequins, the zippers, all of the things that go into, and all of the makers that are included in that space. That would be what I would term, and then the commerce around it too. So the various elements of what fashion looks like, that I would look at as Web3. So it's the whole picture. There's all these different parts and parcels that go into that. The metaverse is one space in that Web3 conversation. So the metaverse is traditionally, and again, it was very newly coined in Merriam-Webster dictionary, but the interconnected worlds for gaming, watching entertainment, collaborating on design programs. So it's a space, and it's a virtual space, but it doesn't encompass all of the different things. So maybe think of the metaverse as like a fashion week or an event, a moment where people can congregate and interact, but it's not the holistic space as in like the whole fashion, the constellation of all that fashion is. So it's one aspect of that. That's where I kind of begin today to talk about it, but it's completely open to debate because we are building it right now. So that's why it's exciting.
Yeah, so it's still pretty much early days. So you've worked with brands like Nike and H&M, and helped them to transition into the metaverse. How can you describe those experiences?
Yes. As much as I'm able, I can share that a lot of the success of this comes from having a really strong strategic roadmap. And what that looks like is not just diving in full score, but actually thinking about how Web3, NFT, Metaverse, all of these things we're talking about play well with the collection that they're looking to connect with the audience through. And I think what's really important is to have that strategic roadmap at the onset. I was lucky enough to do the Super Gucci NFT when I was working in marketing at Super Plastic, and partnered with Gucci brand, and they just have such an excellent identity and understanding of what these ecosystems mean to them in the larger scale of their work. And similarly, Nike just, has done such a wonderful job. I didn't work with them on this project, but they've done such a wonderful job on developing their identity in this Web3 space. But it's because they've been so intentional, and it's because they've been so purposeful. Now, aside from that, in addition to that, I guess I'd say, it is really important to think about how the different elements of the designer's voice come into play in this conversation. So while it's really important to have a strategic roadmap, we also need to hear from the designers who are playing in the games, who are developing and seeing. And when I say playing in the games, that means going into like a Fortnite and seeing what type of skin or digital couture or whatever digital wear is being utilized and seen, and what people are wearing in those spaces, because it's cyclical and it impacts how they are designing and what the audience is looking for or looking at. And so I think it's really important to have a pulse, not only of what the brand is in need of, but also what the consumer is seeking and why they want to follow you into the metaverse. I think that's really important too. And that comes from the designers and having almost that, we call it in US like a street culture look, in the sense of what are we seeing on the street? I think that's really critical to this whole discussion.
Incredible. So Tiffany, the jewelry brand, co-minted 250 NFTs last summer and sold out to the tune of about $12.5 million. What do you think was the secret to their success? And should other luxury brands follow the same strategy to achieve success?
Yeah, I think so, Tiffany. I think you're mentioning the lockets, or not the lockets, but the yeah. So that was a really interesting project that had a lot of those strategic tie-ins that I'm mentioning. And I wasn't behind the strategy of that undertaking, but I can tell you that it completely understood the moment in time that we were at. If you'll remember, that was when NFTs there wasn't a fear around NFTs, but there was a barrel of enthusiasm. And I think what they did was very authentic to their brand. They didn't try to do something that didn't seem like a mix of confusion as to why Tiffany would be doing a pendant, right? It made sense. And I think that was a huge success. They also did a fantastic, I'm a marketer, so they did a fantastic job marketing it and also making it very specialized to the audience. So gearing it to the people who would purchase it. So I think that had a lot of the impact of the success. And I think, again, the basics of knowing your audience, knowing your brand, and then capitalizing on an exciting moment in our culture. I think those were the three top reasons that it did so well.
And it seems to be, a thing now, basically for particularly luxury brands to have a thing going on, in the metaverse where they're selling NFTs and all of that. Could that be? Is it a trend? Why is it a thing now? It's almost like if you're a brand, particularly if you're a luxury brand, if you don't have something doing in the metaverse, you're not correlating with the times. You're not in tune with the times. Is it just a trend, or is this the future?
It's a great question. I don't know if I can honestly say that I have the absolute answer, but I can take a stab because I don't know if we really know all of the degrees of where this continuum that it is Web3 is headed. But I will say that I believe that Web3 is headed towards informing what the future of the internet, of digital connectivity looks like. So I think it is here to stay in that regard. With regards to why brands are kind of picking up on this trend, I like to say that consumers are bored, but they're not stupid. And brands are really seeking a new type of tool in their toolbox to connect with audiences. And I think it's really important to understand that NFTs and what we're talking about when we talk about digital art, that's not new. What's new is this appropriation by brands to make that almost like a premium product that is engaging audiences in a new and exciting way into their communities. So it's almost like when brands got on social media, they're engaging and allowing their audiences to connect with them. And early NFT communities, they were up on Discord or NFT Twitter. They really felt personal and like you were able to get a little bit closer to a brand that you felt an affinity for, and then really well-run NFT programs like the Tom Sachs for Nike, or the Tom Sachs program, which was the Rocket Ship program, or the Tiffany program that you mentioned. Many different communities, World of Women. There's some really great NFT projects. They are first and foremost community-based, and I think that was their intention, to build that intimacy with the consumer. So that doesn't feel like it's going away anytime soon. I think it's taking the place also in one regard, and maybe I shouldn't say taking, but sharing the place at this point in time with how consumers felt like they were engaging with a brand via social media, like an Instagram or a Facebook page. But it gets them one step closer because they can have this ownership and this emblem of ownership. And then really smart brands are also offering NFTs or digital fashion elements that allow the consumer to have a utility. It's talked a lot about, and I think it's probably overused. But what I think is interesting about that utility point is not just saying, thank you for joining, but this is how we want to continue to connect with you. So, and that's utility done right, when you can reconnect with your audiences and be able to continue to show new designs that are forthcoming, or have a sense of you can come to a special event, like a special show. I was in Fashion Week last season and was able to attend a show because I had an NFT of a designer's work. And so I think there's some really interesting examples of how we can continue to unpackage and explore. That's just NFTs. I think there's a lot of different other ways to think about the integration points across Web3 for brands.
Now, interestingly, Tiffany is about to have another collaboration with Nike. What do you think about that? When I saw it, I thought it was an odd mix, but Tiffany has been pretty tech forward and fashion forward ever since one of the Arnolds, that's Bernard Arnault's son, took over. And I think probably as a result of his youth and, being very fashion forward. But what do you think about that collaboration between Nike and Tiffany? Do you think that is going to have some tokenization and NFTs involved? What do you think, about the marketing, everything about it in general?
Yeah, I can't speak to it, other than I can tell you that I think they've done an excellent job with marketing, in the sense of they've built hype. And I think hype is something that can go two ways, right? There was overhype with a lot of NFT projects. But when you see two big players like Tiffany and Nike, and you just see, coming soon, or in NFT Twitter talk, it's, probably nothing, and some eyeballs message, that gets the people in the know really excited. And so I think what's exhilarating to me about this partnership is that they're two brands that maybe Nike's playful, but two brands that are becoming really playful in the space. And for me, a lot of Web3 is about having fun. It's about, maybe I would say not taking oneself so seriously. So I think, Tiffany is definitely a top collaborator for any organization. And I think Nike too. So I'm really looking forward to it. I know there's a lot of speculation. I don't have the answer, so I can't shed any light. But if there's going to be a physical element or a virtual element, and I think just getting that conversation together is really important to kind of like building the understanding of what these types of projects can usher in. And I think it's going to be a great case study to look at across the road mapping, right? Like, I'm interested to see Tiffany. I would love to see Tiffany. If somebody from Tiffany's listening, I'd love to see Tiffany's roadmap as to this pendant and then this Nike collab. I'm really curious to see what their North Star is, where they're headed, and where their audience, what audience they're looking to connect with next, because I think that'll be really intriguing. I'm also interested to see what type of community build there'll be, because if you look at a Nike community, they've done such a great job having a community across both the physical apparel and footwear and accessories that they share, and even just like the identity of an athlete. And then you look at a Tiffany community and you think about the potential there. I'm really intrigued to see how they combine those types of audiences together.
Yeah, amazing. Now, the metaverse claims to be inclusive and diverse, or maybe wants to be so, but the very nature of it, raises barriers. For instance, the VR, the Oculus that you use in accessing these spaces cost about $1,500, or probably even more, depending on the brand, which, will cut off people who don't live in the West. For instance, if you want to veer into digital fashion, you have the system requirements. System requirements, make the systems themselves really expensive. Yeah. I know you're a member of the Metaverse Fashion Council. I think you're on the advisory board. Mm-hmm. What things are being done to at least bring down these barriers and, bring about inclusivity and more diversity?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think that's part of the reason why I really love connecting with a variety of audiences, not just staying in one group and being really globally pointed, because I think it's a really important question. I learned that through my work in integrating sustainability and social responsibility in fashion. And we can't forget the learnings and the important understanding as we move into this Web3 space. So that's really important to me. I love that you asked that question. I think first and foremost, breaking down barriers of entry are really important. And so a lot of the projects that I've worked on and those that I've seen that are really intriguing don't require VR glasses or any type of technology other than having access to the internet to become engaged. Now, I know that that is actually really hard too in some regions as well, just having access. We had a discussion about if there'd be, power tonight. I know it's really difficult, right? And so I think putting, sustainability as a potential solve into that space. So allowing, as we innovate in Web3 technology, we should also think about innovations in computing technology, solar power, and having a sense of what we can bring into this Web3 space to promote accessibility. I think that's really critical. And there's a lot of good work that's going on there, not simply in like an eco-friendly blockchain, but also in some really great advancements in tech. And so I'm really steering towards those types of interfaces and thinking about that at the onset of creating a project. So we know that we're not limiting, but we're actually including more and more. With regards to inclusivity as a whole, fashion's never been a very great space, for inclusivity, but it has been a vocal space for trying to create those types of opportunities. So I'm sticking to fashion to hopefully steer us towards thinking about things like women in this space, the Web3 should look like the world looks, right? Not just be one type of individual, but it should be a constellation of people. And I think that's just really critical to consider. I wish I had the easy answer to it, but I think conversations like this and continuing to allow opportunities, you recently had a fantastic experience, it sounds like, with the digital fashion. Tell me the digital fashion, is it group where you had with yes. Yeah. I think that's so important, and education and accessibility are really critical as we evolve. We're still I feel like we're still in early days with this Web3 space. And I'm thinking in my mind of like the big rooms full of computers in early stage of computing. I think we're still very early. There's some really cool things happening in haptics and technology that allow the body to become involved in this Web3 space in an interesting sensory way where you can, try things on and feel what a material feels like. But we are so far from making that accessible to the very few versus the many. So I'm excited, and I'm really excited about the future and thinking about young designers and young developers and young builders who are thinking with inclusivity and accessibility brains on, so that they can open up this exciting, fun work to be able to bring to everybody.
Yeah, incredible. Most recently, we had the Nigerian AI artist Malika Febua, who created a runway show of elderly people in stylish clothing, and it went viral, using AI. What do you think digital fashion, the opportunities that digital fashion presents, for Nigerian or African illustrators and designers? Do you think that digital fashion presents an opportunity for instance, the fashion industry to go viral, or how will I put it now, to become more exposed, to the world in general?
Yeah, so you have some amazing, and I don't know the whole of it, but you have some amazing history in fashion and also potential for future. I looked up, the figure I saw was $31 billion in sub-Saharan fashion industry, which is sizable, right? I'm sure and I think the estimate that I had was 15% goes to Nigeria as a whole. I don't know if that figure is outdated, but that's not a bad figure. That's not a bad potential. I also think that the history of fashion as a whole in Nigeria, just with the different garment production and the different, their textiles are phenomenal. And just thinking about the voice that Nigeria has in the fashion space as a whole, better than I do, but it's really exciting. And I think, with digital fashion, I hope that something like the materials and the techniques and technologies that you utilize it day to day to develop your attire, right? Just like in physical form, could be really amazing to have a designer take as a material in a virtual space and clothe, utilize as inspiration in the is it Malik? You're gonna have to help me with the presentation.
Malik Afebwa.
Afebwa. So
Yeah.
that was stunning. I hope that the audience can take a peek at that. It was just incredibly compelling. It didn't matter that they were elderly to me. What mattered was like the styling and the dressing and just the whole, the confidence. And I think that irregardless of digital or physical space, we need to see more of that. We need to see more of kind of this unabashedly confident person of any gender, age, color, what have you, in these ecosystems and in these clothing. And if digital fashion can convey that with somewhat of a compelling new stand, or just have the opportunity to circulate visual imagery to a multitude of people, then I think that's a huge potential. I think that there's a lot of attention paid to AI right now, and I think it was so smart for this designer to be able to have fun with what he was doing, but also I think he truly proved a point too. And so I'm excited to see more of that across both, all of Africa and Nigeria today, especially.
Yeah, I'm particularly very interested in digital fashion because I see the incredible potential that it has for African fashion in terms of visibility, because we have really talented designers who, as a result of one thing or the other, or the physicality of fashion, can't showcase that to the world. But, digital fashion just kind of removes all those barriers. It's been wonderful having you, Sasha. It's like you're a moving library of knowledge.
That's
A living library of knowledge. You really are knowledgeable about this space. It's been wonderful having you.
It's my
I'm sorry
absolute
about the background. I'm sorry about the background noise. My daughter just woke up and she's really cranky.
No, and it's okay. My child is homesick, so we're this is what happens. We're super moms. I'm looking to see my child in the doorway. He's looking. I think he needs a Kleenex. So we're in the same boat. But this is what I should say. I'd love to leave. Like, I really believe in women in this Web3 space. I love that you're investigating and bringing attention to it. I think it's really important because everybody has a voice in this space, and I really think that that's why I want to connect with others. So please, I think it's really great what you're doing. Congratulations for all you've accomplished too, and I can't wait to see all of the amazing designs that you'll come up with as well.
Thank you so much. I don't know if anyone has a quick question for you before you go. I know you have to attend to your child. Does anybody have a quick question? Does anybody have a question for Sasha? Does anyone have a question for Sasha? All right. If no one has a question for Sasha, okay.
Okay. Good evening.
Hi.
Yeah. Good evening. Am I by name?
Okay.
I really want to thank you, Omonigho, and also thank you, Ms. Sasha, for this opportunity. Okay, so the question I have is, knowing fully well that the NFT market, blockchain right now is quite down globally, how does what's the transition like? Is there going to be some revive in respect to that? Because now there's nothing been done globally in respect to NFT. Sometimes ago, I was coming across some articles whereby a lot of people who have NFTs that they were working on, all of a sudden there was this value in some of those works I know. So coming from an artist angle or a fashion artist illustrated angle, are there hopes of the NFT being revived in maybe this year or something? And how can one also plug in, knowing fully well that okay, it's seasons come, seasons go, and how?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and I think
did you get the question?
Yeah, I can hear. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Okay, great. No, it's a great question. I can say that in US and in Europe, there are still, and actually UK too, there's still a lot of momentum in NFT space. I don't ever like to sell one modality more than another because I think it is the constellation when we're talking about Web3. You know, there's a lot of potential across. And actually, I think when you're thinking about as a designer, the potential for developing digital fashion for avatars and in these amazing spaces and ecosystems that are being built, I think there's huge potential there. But specific to your question, NFT NYC, NFT LA, I believe NFT Paris, there's just so many conferences and things that are happening. And as a result, I'm seeing a lot of builders, people who are developing NFT projects, still very much creating. And a lot of people are talking about creating in this time when it's a smaller market to be able to actually get into a community that is more accessible, both financially and also there's a little bit less heat on things. So it's a good time to build. I don't think that things are going away. There's a lot of momentum behind them. And actually, I think what's really interesting is when we're talking about interoperability, what that looks like or can look like with an NFT is extending the NFT into a gaming ecosystem or putting it somewhere in addition to simply in a wallet. And so I think that's really being developed now and could be intriguing for the future. And that's not news, but I think it's a place to look into. But I don't think anything, you know, brands are still very interested in NFTs and not backing off. I think there's caution and I think that's good actually. I think the market is regulating itself a little bit. NFTs were a little bit, you know, crazy for a time, which is exciting. But now I think there's more of a sobriety, let's say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. You answered the question because I for one, I was trying to build an NFT collection of fashion images that I've been working on, and you know, different from the norm of just making the regular monkey design and all. So I just felt now that the NFT market, there's been a lot of changes and regulations here and there, and you know, I had to, of course, join the Discord market and try to see how to whitelist myself and all. But when I started seeing this change, this flop and all in the NFT market, so that's why I needed to ask, like, okay, so how is that coming back anytime soon? And if it is, then how can one structure oneself in respect to that?
Yeah, I think you're doing all the right things and staying smart too, and not over investing in. And I would say, I think the NFT consumer is more discerning maybe than they had been in the past, and that's a good thing for interesting and beautiful work, as I'm sure you have. I think that's really going to, I do think it will help in the long run. It's a period of adjustment and potential correction, but I think for a good means. So I wish you luck, and I can't wait to see your project.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, sorry, I just have another question. My second question, and I hope is the last, is in respect to the AI art in this Web3 space. Just like Ms. Omonigho made mention about the Nigerian artist Malik Afegboa, who is doing great. There's been this buzz for like some time now, 6 months going, about a lot of artists, you know, condemning, you know, the AI art, prompt art and all, and feeling like they've been cheated, they're being robbed of their you know, intellectual or creative and genuine in respect to that. But I still feel, is there a way, you know, one can still integrate this AI art? Because I know it has come to stay, and I really believe that it has its own world, it has its own market. But how does one now, you know, come into that space? Because the news, it's I keep getting, you know, more information in respect to AI art, no AI art. The moment you make a work that looks so realistic, immediately someone comes in and says, this is AI art, this is prompt art, and you know, it's been red flagged and all. So how does one cautionary coming into the AI art from the aspect of a fashion designer, a fashion artist and all? Does one come in?
No, it's a great question. I think that so when I get your question, what I think of is if you think of models who have been working in the industry for since the dawn of time, right? And they've been retouched, they've been augmented, they've been manipulated in a variety. I don't think this is anything new in the sense of interacting with that which we utilize to present and share fashion on and with. And so I don't get concerned about AI taking over any designer's roles, because there's such a huge playing field. And I think that I think what's fun about AI is that you can be creative in a different way and maybe test out some things that you might not try in the physical space. But that's a good thing. And I think that should continue to provide inspiration for the designer to be able to be creative, exploratory, but also remember what inspires them to be a designer in the first place, which is having, it's different for each person, but many of the designers that I'm a big fan of have this amazing dialogue with people that they engage in the clothing or footwear or jewelry that they're creating. And it's an interplay. I don't think it's a one-sided conversation. And I think the same for AI. It should be a discussion, meaning the artist, the creator, and that which they're developing, and the tools of all the physical tools too. So it's not, I hope it's not exclusionary, but I hope it's more inclusionary. That's what I'm hoping. It's still so new. We don't know how it's going to be completely played out. I forget who the designer was, but most recently there was a marketing campaign that was shot totally in AI. There's a lot of interesting case studies as to how AI can be brought into the fashion space and certainly utilized to create a story, to create a buzz. But I think there's a lot of potential to collaborate, and I really look forward to that too.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Okay, Sasha, we have to be considerate of you. It's been wonderful having you here. I hope that we can engage on another level soon. I know that other people who have questions can always write in the group, and I hope you stay because as you've joined, you stay. So I hope you stay and witness our activities. And I definitely will be reaching out later and building on this incredible connection.
Well, thank you again for the opportunity, and it's been a pleasure. And yes, well, absolutely. I'm honored to be in the group and happy to join and participate. Again, good luck to everybody. Yeah, I can't wait to see what you create. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. My love to your baby.
Likewise. Have a nice evening. Thank you again.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.